Hi all, RetroTech Chris here again. Welcome back to the channel. We're glad you're here. So today, we're going to continue our journey into DOScember. This is a special month where YouTubers get together and make videos about everything DOS. And today, I'm going to show you a video that I've had in the works, or at least in thought, for over a year. We're going to have a look at performance comparison and other comparisons between different DOS networking methods. Today, we're going to look at 7 different configurations to see which is king among DOS networking components. So, a couple of disclaimers. The performance numbers that you see today are from my experience and may not represent the results you get, but anyway, I want to share them with you. First, we're going to look at the contenders, then we're going to look at the different criteria associated with the contenders, and finally, we're going to look at performance a bit. From there, I'll give you my conclusions and we'll wrap things up. So, without further ado, let's go. So looking at the contenders, there's really 5 different categories that I want to explore today. First, we're going to have a look at LANtastic. Then we're going to have a look at Novell NetWare. Also going to look at Novell Personal NetWare. And then we're going to look at Microsoft SMB-based clients. And finally, an NFS-based client. So to ensure there's no disparity, I've actually selected a couple of Novell servers to connect to. For the Novell NetWare NetX client, I'm calling it, we're going to be using an NT 4.0 server, running the file and print sharing services for NetWare, and also to a plain vanilla Novell 3.12 server. As for the Microsoft SMB clients, we're going to be using the Microsoft Networking Client, which I call Microsoft Client, as well as using Microsoft LAN Manager. We're going to look at a variety of categories for each of the clients, including the minimum processor required, the amount of resident memory required, and this varies. To keep things as compact as possible, we won't be enabling any sort of file or print sharing from our clients. Also, we'll look at free conventional memory on my system. Of course, this will vary for you. We're also going to look at read speed and write speed for about 70 megabytes worth of data, which will consist of programs and installers. And this will be the least scientific portion of the exercise, since, well, many conditions can vary that result in a quicker or a slower read or write speed in the real world. We'll also grade each client on ease of setup, as well as pop-up message support. And then finally, I wanted to conduct an experiment to see how hard it would be to share a Jet Direct printer for each of the implementations. It was something I was curious about, so I'll show you the method that I used for each one of these client installations. For ease of setup and switching between clients, I did create this DOS 6.22 startup menu. We will be using options 1 through 6 today as we do our testing, and we will be using option 2, Novell Client, for 2 of the tests. Our first contender is LANtastic, and the setup process for this is really nice and easy. Basically, we put in a computer name, we say go install here. We can choose whether or not to share our personal resources, which I won't do to conserve memory. And then from there, we can set up our network card, and I'm using an NDIS driver for my 3Com card. And that's pretty much it. I can also choose if I want to set up permanent connections. Click OK, and before long, we go through the disk process and we're all set up. Here we are at first boot, and we'll see just how long it takes to boot up, or rather how short. So it does take a minute there with the redirector, but that's it. Now we're all set. From there, I launched the Net utility so we could map some drives and connect to the server. It asks us to set the time. I mapped drive D to the LANtastic drive C, and then I mapped drive E to LANtastic drive D. Pretty easy to do. Printers are also a cinch to map. There you see it, nice and easy. Looking at free memory, we will see that LANtastic is a lightweight, weighing in at about 65 kilobytes of memory. We do have about 570 free of conventional. I wouldn't mind having a little bit more, and maybe there's ways to optimize it. There should be more things that load high in my opinion, but again, not too bad for a networking engine. Next, we can look at message sending abilities. I'm launching LANtastic server on my Windows 95 system, which is the server. From there, we can click send pop-up as you see there, put in the server name, and then put in a brief message. And before long, after we hit send, it will be delivered. Nice and simple and a nice little interface. And I like the output too on the client. Very cool. As for printing, I'm using Harvard Graphics 3.0. And this very nice little chart that I drew, which isn't really representative of what we're doing, but shows a couple of different networking methods. I figured it would be good to print out a graphic to get a feel for how long it takes to print. And I was also going to benchmark this, but I found that every program took about 20 to 30 seconds to print out from start to finish, and that was largely dependent upon spool time, so we'll leave it be and say that it's a pretty consistent and common printing time for each of the different networking implementations. Next, we're going to look at the Novell NetX client. And you can see me setting this up in my autoexec.bat, loading all of the necessary applications high to make NetX work. From there, we have started up and we can go ahead and log into Supervisor. Startup is super fast for Novell. Looking at the memory footprint, it's about 86 kilobytes, which is not too bad, and a fair amount does load high, giving us about 580 kilobytes of free conventional memory, which is great. For pop-up messages, we're going to use the File and Printer Services for NetWare Control Panel item. So I'll go ahead and launch that, and then click on Users at the bottom left, and from there the Supervisor user is selected. We'll hit Send Message, and I can also change this to send to everybody connected to the server. Why not? From there we can type our little message that we want to send, click on OK, and then OK again, and we will see the message appear on the bottom of the screen on the right, the client. Very cool. Next up, we'll look at NetX connected to a 3.12 server. And yes, it does start up that fast. I'll go ahead and get logged in here as supervisor so we can proceed. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at the memory footprint, just to prove that it's the same for both the NT 4.0 and NetWare 3.12 servers. Very cool. Everything is the same. For pop-up support, we can go to the NetWare console and use the broadcast command. You'll notice something. Notice how I used mixed case, but on the right everything comes out uppercase. Interesting. As for printing, we can use the capture program by using this syntax here. And we're actually going to attach to a printer on the NT server shared out as a NetWare print queue. So that capture command there will do that for us, and we can log in as supervisor since we do need to log into that server. And we can also look at the pconsole command and change over to that server and look around a little bit. If we look at print queue information, we can see there are no jobs in the queue. And we can also see that a server is attached to this print queue. Pretty cool if you do ask me. Next up is Novell Personal NetWare. And I love the setup program. Lots of options, easy to use. Of course, the more options you use, the more memory you use, but it's nice and configurable. So here we are on first boot of Novell Personal NetWare, and we get to run this first time setup where we can either choose to join an existing workgroup or create one. We will be joining an existing one. And with that, this part of the setup will then continue, creating an account on that particular NetWare peer server. And with that, we're all set and we're logged in and ready to go. Nice and easy. I'll go ahead and do another reboot so you can see what that looks like. And on boot, we will be prompted for a username, which we can go ahead and put in, and a password as well, if necessary. Looking at the memory footprint, it is an impressively low 81K. And look how most things are loaded high. We have 621K of free conventional, and very little of that is personal NetWare. The user interface is also outstanding. Here you can see me mapping a drive to drive F. It's super easy to use. Personal NetWare got it right. Next up, I'll demonstrate sending a message, and it's as easy as saying net send from the personal NetWare server on the left, and before long we get our message on the right. Nice and easy. I love it. As for printers, we are going to map to the printer on the NT 4.0 server, So I do need to enable the ability to connect to binary-based Novell servers. After that, we do also have to specify in the Net tool if we want to see it. I'm not sure why that's not default, but that's fine. From there, we can put in a username and press enter for the password, and we can then go ahead and find our printer that lives on that other server. And I'll go ahead and map it to LPT1, and from there we'll be all set, nice and easy. So next up we have Microsoft LAN Manager. You can see me running the setup program here. We will install the enhanced version of LAN Manager, and from there we can select our network card driver as you see me doing here, get that all installed, and then I'm going to also choose all protocols here, though I really shouldn't, more on that later. Moving along, we can put in a subnet mask, a default gateway, or other settings we want to put in, and move forward, give a computer name, a username, and a domain or workgroup name, and also enable messaging support, but not Windows support, though we could if we wanted. I also let LAN Manager maximize memory, though I'm not sure what that does, more on that. So here we are doing first boot of LAN Manager, and you are going to notice something. It is very, very slow. The TCP/IP initialization part takes forever, but as the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. We put in our password and we get to wait some more as some browser discovery is done, I believe, or at least I think that's what's happening. Looking for a server to log into, and sometime later it will say, nothing found, but you can move on. So we would like to. Looking at memory usage, this uses a whopping 319 kilobytes of memory. Holy smokes. We have 402 kilobytes of free conventional memory. That's it. This thing is a hog. LAN Manager does come with a nice little user interface. It's a touch clunky. We can go ahead and connect to some drives and servers. I'll demonstrate connecting to the LANtastic server, which is also set up to be an SMB server. We can go ahead and map a drive, we can map a printer, and although it's not the easiest, it does get the job done, and we're able to map things. I personally prefer the command line, but this is certainly an option if you want to use it. So as far as sending messages, I will be sending a message from WinPopup in Windows 95. However, for the performance portion of this video that you will see later, we actually used an NT 4.0 server to be the file server for our SMB clients. Nice message on the right, nice dialog box, very cool. For printing, I went ahead and remapped the printer since I did actually do a reboot between the time that I initially set this up, and I thought I'd go ahead and run Harvard graphics, and here we go, and look at that, program too big to fit into memory. So I went ahead and commented out the MSDLC and NetBEUI protocols and went ahead and rebooted. With this, our memory footprint is now down to 243 kilobytes from 319. So we did save some memory and we have more conventional memory available now and are able to print accordingly. Next up is Microsoft NetWare Client. And we can set our username as well as configure various options so that we have just the TCP/IP protocol. Sometimes we learn from our past mistakes, and that will minimize the memory usage. Of course, I set up my network card as well. The setup is a little bit clunky for this, but it gets the job done. You just have to know to tab around between the different windows. So here we are on first startup, and while not the slowest, this is definitely not the fastest either. But eventually we do get prompt for a username and password and the request to save this to a password file. Looking at the memory footprint for this, we can see that it will use about 124 kilobytes of memory. And looking at free conventional, we can see that we have 452 kilobytes. Not great. MS Client does have this nice little graphical utility for mapping drives and printers. I like the simplicity of it, pretty cool. You can certainly use it. Again, I do prefer the command line, but it is nice to use. Next we have XFS. And XFS is a little bit more complex to set up. There is this host file that you have to modify. The opportunity to hand edit files can result in errors, and there's no real graphical way to set things up, so that makes difficulty a little bit higher for this. And from there, there's this init file that we also have to set up. Again, a little bit cumbersome, but if you understand it, you will be able to do it. And I do have a tutorial on this. I'm also setting up a mount for a printer and a file system as well. And from there, we need to change the XFS BAT to load the right packet driver. and from there also add last drive Z to config sys. That said, startup is lightning fast as you see here, which is pretty awesome. The memory footprint also isn't bad. With 68K of resident memory, I just wish more would load high, so I would have more free conventional memory than the 563K we have. As far as looking at things, there is an XFS tool show which will show you the connections you have, and there's the ability to also map things using the XFS tool. Not nice and graphical, but it gets the job done. So here we have a comparison of the different clients. And as promised, I told you I would tell you what the minimum processor requirement is. For all clients but personal NetWare and XFS, this system will run on an 8088. Now, if you have an 8088 system where you can upgrade to a V20, you are in luck. Personal NetWare and XFS will run on a V20 processor, and I do run these on my Tandy 1000HX. As for resident memory, we can see that LANmanager and MS Client are indeed hogs. Now, if we were to enable file sharing on the local system for LANtastic or personal NetWare, the memory usage would also go up. And as noted for personal NetWare, we increased the memory usage so that we could, indeed, print to a bindery-based server. So there are ways to increase the memory footprint if you're not careful. That said, I am very impressed by LANtastic and by XFS when it comes to memory usage. Looking at free conventional memory, which again is just a measure on my system and will vary from system to system, I am extremely impressed with personal NetWare. As far as ease of setup, most of these are pretty easy to set up with the right tutorial. There is some hand editing. XFS was the most cumbersome, but not terrible, and we do have procedures on setting up all of these, so with that, it is possible. We can see that the majority of clients also support pop-up, except for MS Client and XFS. And as far as sharing printers are concerned, there is a way to do it. Though I will say, I spent the most amount of time trying to figure out how to either share printers or solve weird bugs, but in the end, I found a solution for each one of these, and all procedures are listed in the video link below, with most of the setups actually having videos to correspond. Next, let's have a look at write performance, and I have sped this up 20x. We will see the various systems here copying about 70 megabytes of data. LANtastic finishes first, followed by the NetWares, and then from there, LANmanager, MS Client, and XFS do take a little bit longer. Looking at read speed, there was a degree of disparity, and I think this resulted from LANmanager and MS Client struggling to copy some of these MS Office cab files. It froze forever. It may be a bug in writing, or maybe there's a buffer that can be increased, but the performance was not good by an order of magnitude when it came to LANmanager and MS Client. And here you can see we have our results. Once again, that write speed for LANmanager and MS Client sticks out like a sore thumb, taking almost 7 minutes, whereas the majority of the clients wrote in about 2 or 3. And as for read speed, you can see that pretty much all of the clients were in line with each other. However, it does look like we have a clear winner here, and that would be LANtastic. Here we have everything we've looked at today in one big table for your convenience. And it was really an interesting study. I was really surprised to see some of the results. In particular, the fact that LANtastic was so fast, which was really cool, and also the most memory efficient. So as far as winners and losers, for me, I have to declare LANtastic a winner. Now, that's not to say that it meets all applications. In a lot of cases, I actually use LANmanager, and the reason why is because it connects easily to SMB shares. And well, we live in a Microsoft ecosystem when it comes to Windows and DOS. It's just more convenient. But there's no question that you pay a penalty by using LANmanager or some other SMB client on an MS-DOS system. I did have a couple of weird performance snafus with XFS. I can't really explain why. It might have been a config sys or autoexec.bat setting, so that made it kind of interesting, but all in all, it performed very well. Of course, the downside to XFS is it connects to a PC NFSD client, which is not current, but if you're interested in installing it, it can be done and built from source code, and of course we do have a procedure on how to do that here on the channel. When it comes to NetWare, I have to say it's the rock. It's always kind of been a solid foundation for DOS networking. It has support in Windows NT, Windows 95, most Windows versions that were of the retro era, and it's a great choice. I was very impressed with the performance of all of my NetX client applications here, and was very impressed with what Personal NetWare brought to the table. So, all in all, each one of these solutions has its pluses and minuses and applications. And also, I'll say it again, the read speeds and write speeds that I got were mine, and you may not have something similar. So I encourage you to try out a variety of these methods if you're looking to set up your own DOS network. All right, well that's what I had for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find it informative and that you go out and try some of these methods. And maybe in the future, I'll look at some other methods. I've been meaning to look at DEC Pathworks, and maybe there's others as well. Definitely subscribe to the channel. There's more content on the way. Ring that notification bell and you'll be notified when that new content is available. If you liked what you saw today, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. In all cases, it's been great having you along for the retro journey, and I look forward to seeing you next time. But until then, bye for now.